Hi, everybody. This is the Red Lettuce. I am your host, Eric Unger, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Robert Grillo and Mitch Friedman. And
Hey,
Mitch Friedman is the newest addition to the Red Lettuce. Mitch, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Hey, I'm Mitchell. I am a socialist. I have a lot of spicy hot takes. I am looking forward to sharing them with you.
Awesome. We are very excited for you to join us. And our first story, Robert has an interesting topic to discuss. Robert?
yeah. Hey guys, great to be here again. And so there's just so much going on right now. As you know, I track a lot of what's going on in like animal agriculture and, how this pandemic is playing out and how it's affecting animals and the environment and the industry that is destroying our planet to a large extent. Aside from fossil fuels, it's animal agriculture, which is the industry that nobody wants to talk about. Everybody wants to focus on fossil fuels, right? Which is definitely worth our attention and concern. But we can't, in the process, completely overlook the other industry that contributes so enormously to the same problems, right? So this week, I saw some things that I thought were kind of interesting. One of the things that's coming out in the news is that that the stock market is actually reflecting investor concerns in the fate of slaughterhouses. There was an article in Yahoo Finance, and I look at a lot of the mainstream media stuff because I figure that's one barometer of how we can gauge what's going on. And in Yahoo Finance, it said that in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, there's been a 3.5% drop in animal agriculture stocks because there's a specific concern about how the virus could shut slaughterhouses. And I'm quoting the analyst. I'm not making that up, for the hell of it. The analysts themselves said this could affect the slaughterhouse industry. If people start becoming aware of the connection between whatever you want to call them, wet markets in China, live markets here that have conditions that are very similar. We may not have the same species as the ones in China, but the conditions, I've personally been to several of them. I know from experience, the conditions are gruesome. And then, so those are the small places, but then you combine that with all the other manifestations of animal agriculture, like the hunting and trading of wildlife. And what you find is that this whole industry is connected. These aren't separate components. They're very much connected, and they're very much, profit driven. And so I saw that, and then I came across a really interesting story on a nonprofit I had not heard about before called grain.org. And the title of their post is "New Research Suggests Industrial Livestock, Not Wet Markets, Might Be the Origin of COVID-19. Now, you could easily overlook this article in all the coverage that there's been. But what I found really amazing about this post is all of the references. It was very, very well written and sourced. There's all kinds of footnotes to the sources. So it was very carefully done. And here's a quote: "Pigs and humans have very similar immune systems, making it easy for viruses to cross between the two species, as happened with the Nipah virus outbreak in Malaysia in 1998. Indeed, just 3 years before the COVID-19 outbreak began, tens of thousands of pigs in 4 factory farms in Qinyang County in Guangdong, less than 100 kilometers from the site where the SARS outbreak originated in 2003, died from an outbreak of new lethal coronavirus strain, SADS, that turned out to be 98% identical to the coronavirus found in horseshoe bats in a nearby cave. Luckily, transmission to humans did not occur, but subsequent laboratory tests demonstrated that such transmissions could have been possible. Sorry, it just goes on and on and on. But so there's that connection with industrial pig farming, and that there might have had to be another source for the spread of the coronavirus, that it wasn't just bats or pangolins, because they're not similar enough to us. So there had to be an animal that was really widely exploited and had very similar immune systems to us. And that's what the study is about. So then, as other stories that have come out, one of the big ones that you're seeing all over now is that dairy farmers are dumping milk because they can't sell what they've produced because of the pandemic. And so they're dumping hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk, and then they're going to look for what they did, like exactly what happened in 2017. They're going to look for millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies from the USDA to buy back product. So what happens is the USDA bought millions of pounds of their cheese in response to them losing so much in 2017. They're expecting that same thing from the USDA now, and people are outraged by it because it's a bailout. It's a bailout that's not unlike the bailout of the banks. It's just the bailout of a corporate farming, and a system which overproduces. And even if it wasn't for the pandemic, they're overproducing product in a system where we think that like the free market creates all this efficiency, and all it does is create a lot of waste in this case. And then we end up having to salvage and bail out this industry that, if it wasn't bailed out, would tank and probably be replaced by plant-based milk and vegan dairy industry if we allowed that to happen. But they don't want free market when it comes to bailing their asses out. They want socialism.
Right.
Those people vote for Trump. They want socialism when it comes to bailing their asses out, and we're sick of it.
Shouldn't we get that milk and that cheese and that food they throw away if we're going to end up paying for it eventually?
Right.
Like, why are they allowed to get rid of it and throw it away?
Well, because it's not profitable. They won't make a profit off it. Like we're also seeing, well, in general, a third of our food that we produce goes to waste. It sits in dumps and landfills and dumpsters in the back of these food producers, because it's not. They won't make a profit off of it. I mean, Capitalism equals anarchy of production. Like we overproduce things. We don't produce things according to need. We base things on supply and demand. And it just shows that capitalism has all these internal contradictions with itself, and it can't rationally produce things according to need. So
speaking of the waste that capitalism creates, this is a perfect case in point of how misled the public is. Somebody on Facebook asked me, if you were to if animal agriculture was to end, we would have to find an alternative source of protein to feed the world. And what I responded to him was that we already feed almost 50% of the grains that we produce to farmed animals. Just think, if we were to eliminate animal agriculture, we would have about 40 to 50% of those nutritious grains that are high in protein to feed to hungry human mouths.
Right. We could feed 10 billion people. We could already feed the projected amount of people that are going to be here in like 2050.
Yeah.
With amount of food, with the grains that we already feed to animals that could go to us.
Right.
And this is without just eliminating the meat altogether, right? Like, I mean, what I'm hearing you saying is that you don't even need to eliminate the meat to like fully. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Or are you talking about like getting rid of the meat industry altogether?
if animal agriculture was to go away, we wouldn't no longer be feeding farmed animals. And
Right.
the amount of grain that we produce is equivalent to about 40 to 50% of the world's grain yield is fed to farmed animals rather than humans. So, you know, we could feed exponentially so many more people if
Right.
we didn't have to feed
Yeah.
farmers.
We could literally end world hunger, like, I don't know, like multiple times over. And we could already do it with the amount of,
And save water.
yeah, I mean, we could already do it now. It's just
Yeah.
capitalism doesn't allow that because oppression is
It's
profitable.
interesting that all these things that we can't do, like work from home or feed people, or like some cities are like, you know, they're banning rent, right, or mortgages.
Right.
But they say, oh, we can't do that. We can't give people housing. We can't feed people. But there's all this overproduction of food. I used to work for a cafe, and we'd throw our food out at the end of every night. But
Mhm.
it like is dated to last 30 days. So, you know, at the end of the night, you're throwing away almost an entire fridge full of food if you didn't sell it all. And I mean, if each sandwich is like $5 or $6 a pop, you're throwing away $100 every night. That's like a whole day of working at a cafe.
Yeah, right.
Criminal.
So here's something too that I want to end with this, because in China, which is a market that the Westerners exploited to the hilt, they brought industrial agriculture to China over the last several decades. So what happened is that China became one of the biggest, I think it is the #1 pork producer in the world. And it had a lot to do with US and European interests going in and saying, hey, we can create a huge market for meat here, even in a country that very little relied on meat. The meat part of their diet was very small in comparison to ours. They came in and said, hey, we can create a huge market for you. So here's what's happened in the last year. Almost 60% of China's pig population, which is millions, died of a pig virus that, like a dysentery type disease. It's a wound disease, and it kills baby piglets by the millions. 60% of China's pig population died of this virus. The prices skyrocketed. Now, guess what? The Western European and American countries come to the rescue. And this is the story that came out in Yahoo Finance. This is the title: Pigs fly in as China replenishes world's biggest hog herd. After swine flu, and here's an excerpt. After swine flu wiped out nearly 60% of China's piglet population, now new research is implicating pig farming as a connection to the COVID-19 outbreak. Amid all this, other countries are cashing in on the crisis, sending China millions of breeding sows on flights to rebuild China's pig population. And Reuters says 6 planes carrying more than 4,000 high-quality French breeding pigs have arrived in China so far this year, the first of an expected dozens of plane loads of the world's top pork producer rebuilds its, so that the world's top pork producer can rebuild its decimated hog herd. So in the midst of a pandemic that was created by our exploitation of animals, what are we doing? Exacerbating the problem even further. So we can create future pandemics that are even worse than this. It's just unbelievable.
Well, right. You know, we are seeing a lot of closing down of, you know, certain department stores, certain businesses are closing down, that are not essential, quote unquote, not essential services, to limit the exposure of people that might be infected with this coronavirus. But no one's shutting down the main sources of these diseases, and that's, you know, slaughterhouses and meat packing industries and animal agriculture.
Right.
It's just, and like you said, now they're just ramping it up.
We're playing with fire. We're saying that it's over there in China or Africa.
It's all
never
over.
there.
It's
But you know
everywhere.
what? One day it's going to be here. And we're just playing with fire, thinking that being, the Republicans are talking about, oh, close those Chinese wet markets. It's a political game.
Right.
Like Lindsey Graham. What those people fail to recognize is that you could look in your own backyards, and if you tested some of the feces and some of what you're finding there, you would find diseases that if they got out, if they cross from pigs to humans, which is entirely possible because pigs and humans have very similar immune systems, we're fucked when that happens. And it could happen right here at home.
Right. And it's very specious what they're saying on the media.
It becomes racist. It becomes specious.
Racist, specious.
Yeah.
And then now it's playing into like some of the foreign policy. I read this CNN article earlier that talked about the wet markets in Hong Kong, and now suddenly CNN is saying Hong Kong is part of China because they want to manufacture consent for this imperialist foreign policy we're trying to push forward now by like, oh, you gotta close those wet markets. But from what you were saying earlier, it sounds like it's an industrial capitalist problem and not a Chinese wet market problem.
Exactly.
We brought that there. And you know what else is really interesting and ironic is that the audience and the market for those wildlife specialty products, that those wet markets, those are high-end, affluent Chinese and Europeans and Westerners that come to China and want to try these exotic animals. So they're creating the market. And this market wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the affluent class. Chinese, Asians, Europeans, we're fueling it.
Robert, I'm interested in your thoughts on Tiger King and how like illegal animal trades and these like sanctuaries and zoos might tie into some of this like COVID stuff and the way people like are reacting to the show, I think is really interesting because they're really focused on Carole Baskin, but they're not looking at like, these like cult leaders who are grooming underage girls to like marry them one day, to I guess kind of force them to take care of these animals and do all of the like emotional labor interacting with the public who come to give this guy money to see his tigers. I wonder your thoughts.
Yeah, Robert, have you seen that movie yet?
Yeah, I've been watching it. What I think is really telling is the fact that, like, whenever there's a case of this, of like, a high-profile case of animal cruelty or exploitation, it's always tied into the exploitation of other groups. Whether it be, sexual assault, domestic violence, drugs, all the other social ills, they're always tied into animal abuse. And a lot of these predatory personalities start with animals, or abusive personalities. They start with animals and then they move to vulnerable human groups. And there's studies about this that are really powerful, I think. But the other thing that you guys may have heard of was that in the Bronx Zoo, they found 5 tigers that were infected with COVID-19.
Yeah, I saw that today. I was gonna bring that up. I was gonna say that too.
Right. So like we've got these tigers, we've got these exotic wild animals in zoos. We've got them in shows, and it's like, oh, in the zoo setting, we're supposed to like honor that because they're really doing a service and helping us understand these species. They're just profiting on,
we're displacing those species.
Right, for our sensory pleasure. It's just for our entertainment, like as if these animals were here for entertainment.
It's just really so bizarre and dystopian.
It is.
When you Tiger King, and you hear about the Bronx Zoo animals in confinement that are forced to have, you know, COVID-19 because they're exposed to worker. The whole thing is just so dystopian. It's like, oh my God, what a world we've created, where the source is our exploitation of animals. And then we give it back to other groups of animals that we exploit for profit because we have it and we give it to them. It's like, I don't know, you can't make this shit up. Let's just put it that way.
No, I know. And I think a lot of people, from what I've seen, like, that post about this movie and their reactions to it, it's more about the characters that are involved and not about the animals, and the fact that we have an exotic underground animal trade breeding organization going on.
Right. Who knew
It's
it was
very
COVID?
disturbing. It's wrong on so many levels. And I think that is the most important part of the movie.
Right.
Is just this is what's going on in our backyard.
I thought it was interesting that they were in Florida too, because Florida has that's a big port for illegal animal trade. So a lot of like people buy these Burmese pythons that come in through Florida, and then they get loose in the Badlands there, and now there's all these non-indigenous like snakes.
Yeah.
Like making a new home,
and they take out the native species.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
And I guess the situation with iguanas is similar too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I read a story about that earlier this year.
And
This past year, about how the state of Florida, they allowed people just to go kill iguanas.
Yeah, they declared open season on those poor iguanas, and I mean,
it's a problem we created.
Yeah.
And they pay the price because
how do we solve it? That's like,
we allowed people to have all of these iguanas, and then they became irresponsible pet owners, and they became loose, and then they you know, proliferated in the wild or as feral animals, and then they did really well. And so what's always the solution? It's always not looking at our own responsibility, but to just decimate that other species that became a problem, but a problem that we originated, which is something we never want to take responsibility for.
Well, it's foreign policy too. We never want to like look at the things that we did to help catalyze the issue. We just always want to like impose sanctions or, I don't know, overthrow the government there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's also an issue like how, you know, we don't really have a say in what kind of businesses get to operate at the state or local, federal level. We have no say in the matter in how things are produced and like what is made. And I think a lot of people, if they had a voice and power, I think there'd be a lot more people wanting to ban these, you know, puppy mills or like pet store, you know, these like, you know.
Oh, pet stores. Oh.
I know these pocket things. It's just the breeding of animals and selling them like on a marketplace, exploiting them and just making a profit off them. It's just wrong on so many levels. Yeah. I mean, if it's wrong to do it to humans, it should be wrong to do it to other sentient beings as well.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that Tiger King is just such a surreal example of all this. I can see why the show is so successful. It was well done, and it's the story. Who the hell can make this shit up? I mean, the story is so bizarre. It's surreal.
Yeah. And just when you think it can't get any worse, like someone has like another husband who like has murdered somebody. Like, I'm pretty sure every person they like showed on this show has gone to jail for something.
Oh yeah, totally.
Or like
there's not one good guy. There's not one good person in this whole show.
Except for
all
Saf.
Bad guys, all villains.
Except for Saf. Saf is the only good person in the whole show, and they misgender him the whole time.
Yeah, that's also upsetting. That's another issue that got totally glossed over, the misgendering. of a trans man
Right.
that was a staff member misgendering. So
Huh.
that was another issue too. But
Something interesting in the show that they also kind of skim over is when Joe Exotic runs for office. He runs for president and then he runs for governor. And when he runs for governor, he gets like 20% of the vote. It's crazy. But
Wow.
people kind of laugh that off. But what I don't think that they see is that business owners run for office so that they can write their own rules, either through lobbying or they actually like Bloomberg, right?
Sure.
Donald Trump. These people want to be able to write their own rules, and they don't care who's exploited underneath them, whether it's animals or other people. It's just really gross, and I wish that people would watch Tiger King and just think, this is capitalism. This is laissez-faire economics. These people don't want to be regulated, and they just want to make a lot of money, and they just want to like groom all these young girls to not only be their like servants and do all of their emotional labor,
and men,
but uphold their like cult leader status through their like sexuality and just the power that comes with like posting a picture with a baby tiger or riding an elephant or something like that.
Yeah, that's so true. And the cult like is quite the key word here. The other thing that I thought was really creepy too was like the sexualization of the animals.
Yeah.
I recall him sexualizing the females, the cats, the big cats, and like, oh, you big sexy mama or something like that. And there was something really creepy about that to me.
Yeah. It's like, just really gross because, but I mean, you know what they do to keep these, you got to keep one animal pregnant the entire time so that she's always making babies, right? It's the same as dairy farming. They keep those cows pregnant their entire lives until they keel over so that they can, produce more milk and take it away.
Yeah, and they take the babies away from the mothers. It's just, it's the same process, the same torturous process, and they, suffer the same way.
Right. So what else do you guys have tonight? Need for a third party?
Yeah.
I'm not voting for Joe Biden. I can't do it.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely not.
No, none of us are. I don't think,
as
Robert.
coherent as Trump. I mean, I've been listening to him speak, and he's almost, he's just incoherent most of the time.
Yeah. Trump has this in the bag. I don't think liberals want to admit that. Trump has this. I want Bernie Sanders to be successful, and I want him to pull through. It seemed really. I'm not very optimistic about it because my friend Joe, my buddy Joe, I'll campaign for my friend Joe. Well, I thought you were trying to be president, so I don't know. I'm kind of disenfranchised from supporting him, even though I still do. It's like it's with a grain of salt, and I'm pretty jaded about it. But he didn't convince me to vote for Hillary Clinton, and he won't convince me to vote for Joe Biden because he is a flip-flopping piece of shit. He's a creepy rapist, and I love how the Me Too movement is suddenly like really quiet about it because like someone on their side.
And so is Bernie Sanders.
Right, exactly.
About it.
Uncle Bernie, what's good? Where are all these people? Even I don't think I've even heard anything from Elizabeth Warren, but I just want someone on their side to admit that they're putting the Democratic version of Trump against the Republican version of Trump. And I don't know, it just leaves me like speechless about how stupid it is. And I feel like I'm like running against wind when I try to talk to some of my friends about it. Oh, you're going to hand Trump another 4 years. Trump already has another 4 years. All right, he did that without me not voting for Joe Biden. He's already going after Joe's incomprehensible speeches. They last 7 minutes and they don't make any sense. And he's already ripping him apart. I think liberals have seriously underestimated like how badly conservatives want Donald Trump to be president. And I think they've underestimated the power of Trump's base. And they're really cocky. They're like, oh yeah, Russiagate, he's a criminal. Okay, well,
what they don't see here is that the Democratic Party has handed Trump numerous gifts with this whole Russiagate thing.
Yeah.
And the way that they've, handled this whole like coronavirus stimulus bill that's, just a big handout to corporations and the banks.
The thing that I've noticed about sorry to interrupt you, but the thing I noticed with the stimulus bill are the little bitty universal basic income gifts, right? Trump's giving me money. Trump bailed out the farmers a couple months ago. And what conservatives don't see or care about is that there's they don't care about the bigger problem or the bigger issue of capitalism. They see that Trump did something for them a few times. And so now that they're like really paying attention to the news, all they're going to see is creepy, sleepy Uncle Joe Biden slurring his words, not making any sense. And Donald Trump is going to make them laugh. And they're going to see, oh, well, Trump gave me my $1,200, so I'm voting for Donald Trump. That's what they're going to see.
Right. Because they're making, the Democratic Party is making this really easy for Trump. Because also the Democratic Party is not an opposition party at all. They're owned and controlled by the same people that control the Republican Party. So they're fine with Donald Trump in office. I mean, they would prefer Joe Biden because he toes the line better, maybe. Even, I don't know, probably not even this in his dementia state, but they want someone that would rather toe the line better, but Trump does just fine. He gives all the donor class, the ruling class, everything they want.
Yeah.
So he sticks to the imperialist agenda. Right now they're initiating a coup in Venezuela. They have a bounty on Maduro for $15 million to overthrow him. And they are sanctioning the world. Mainly the worst hit is Iran. They're using this crisis to advance their imperialist agenda.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the socialist nations of the world are engaging in international solidarity and cooperation and actually fighting the pandemic.
Didn't Russia send us a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, they did.
And, we accepted it, but
and we're sanctioning them too.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the U.S. empire is just it's just revealing how it's just so it really just exposes where it really stands in the world and where the future is going.
Yeah.
And that's why this is another reason why we really, Bernie Sanders has just really proven to us this time around more than ever that we cannot support anyone in the Democratic Party. We can't entertain this anymore. We don't have time. We really need to organize outside the Democratic Party. We really need a revolutionary socialist vanguard party that emphasizes anti-imperialism and socialism as the answer. And we won't stop at just reforms. We have to go beyond this capitalist system.
We have that party
away. Huh?
Why don't we have that party yet? That's what I want to know. Why don't we have a third party yet?
Well, I mean, there are third parties. They're just not being utilized.
Right.
I think we have the this, I think that there are some third parties, like for example, the Party for Socialism and Liberation Party. They're a very militant, revolutionary socialist party. I mean, these parties lacked funds to really organize on a mass scale, but they have the foundation to really produce that. It's just, we have to really make people aware of what. I'm sorry, what did you say, Robert?
The question I have then, the next follow-up question I have is, if that party exists and could potentially become a viable third party, we could create a coalition, a coalition government. How would, what about all the people that support Bernie? Could they win those people over to create a bloc?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we need to do. And I think that's what a lot of people, like, especially in the Party for Socialism and Liberation, that's what they are doing. They're trying to work with people within the Bernie Sanders movement, because that's like the real revolutionary momentum is at. It's like the people that are in the Bernie Sanders movement, because I think they really understand anti-imperialism and anti-capitalist praxis. They understand that the United States is a threat to the world, and what we're doing abroad is atrocious and violates international law, and that we can have a better world through system change. And I think there's a lot of revolutionary potential within the Bernie Sanders movement, and being there on the ground, letting yourself and like letting people know who you are and what you stand for during this period of time, especially within the Bernie Sanders movement, is how you organize and stoke up revolutionary consciousness and move the Overton window to the left and where it needs to be, and what
I
we
think
need to
in
do.
order to do that, also we have to really expose the Democrats for the collaborative capitalist right-wing party that they are. A lot of liberals think they're left-wing, and this is not to patronize them, but they're not left-wing at all. They're right-wing. They're just the left side of the plane, right? So when I talk to people about things like this, especially about joining another party, which that's something that I've been trying to do for a while, is that the Democrats are not left wing. Nancy Pelosi is not left wing.
They're to the right of Trump supporters.
Right. And even I think Bernie Sanders is left-wing-ish. He's hardly left-wing enough for me personally, but like I said earlier, he's like the compromise, right? So I think it's okay to look at him and people like AOC who are championing some of the things that we want, but also it's okay at the same time to say, but we need a better and stronger alternative that they can also join and come over to, I guess, the dark side. And because I think what we're going to see in the next, 5-10 years, hopefully before climate change drowns us, is that is the Democratic establishment falling apart. And my hot take is that half of the Democratic Party will like siphon into the Republican Party, and that's when liberals are really going to see where they stand on things. With with this Russiagate thing and impeachment, two Democratic politicians or congressmen left the Democratic Party and joined the Republicans. And so, I think it's already started, and I think that we could use those examples to highlight just how how close they are in ideology and how close they are in praxis.
Bernie Sanders, again, is sheep herding people into the arms of the Democratic Party, which is a graveyard for progressive movements. And, you know, we're seeing this a second time around, and Bernie Sanders did worse the second time around. And he really betrayed us even worse this time. I couldn't believe that he could do worse than he did before with the whole Hillary Clinton backing and stumping for her.
Yeah.
Bernie,
Trump was like, I'm not going to support whoever the nominee is because I want to be president. And people ate that up on the right wing. And I think that kind of attitude is what got him to victory. And Bernie Sanders is just so, like, he's way too nice to these people who are war criminals. First of all, they're terrorists, and they've authorized, I mean, even he voted to bomb Yugoslavia. So, like, but
yeah, Bernie he's an imperialist, and that's why he's not. That's why I hate when people say he's a socialist. He's not. He's not a socialist. He's not an anti-imperialist. And he's operating in the confines of the Democratic Party. Yeah. Which is the opposite of socialist. They're an ultra-capitalist, imperialist party.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, these are just a list of reasons of why we really need to stop entertaining the idea of the Democratic Party being reformed or breaking it up, because people that claim to be progressives have really turned their back on us. They always bend the knee to the establishment. It's happened with not just with Bernie, but also members of the squad have voted in ways that do not benefit us or people abroad. They're not advancing the class struggle at all. And that's what we need. We need a party and a movement that's going to advance the class struggle even further. And that can only be done through a vanguard revolutionary socialist party.
The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Exactly. And I think that's a great note to end this on.
Yeah,
thank you guys.
my favorite.
What'd you say, Robert?
One of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, that's the beautiful quote.
We stand Audre Lorde in this house.
Definitely.
By the way, just to end on a note that we started on, even Elizabeth Warren thought that the idea that people had to eat less burgers or not eat animals as much was, she created this fake news phenomenon by saying that our diets basically have nothing to do with climate change.
Oh, really?
Absurd and completely irresponsible.
Wow.
And we can also say that Bernie Sanders, first, you know, as much as we might like his policies in other areas, or at least he's on the right side of things, his position on protecting that industry, and in particular the dairy industry in Vermont, is steadfast.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has been rightfully protested against by animal rights activists at some of his rallies. And it's, you know, it's because even he will not betray this industry, even someone like him. So we need someone more progressive in the sense of not just progressive in the sense that at least if you're not going to admit that animals have some value, which would be great, at least admit that dairy farming is one of the most unnecessary and incredible contributors to climate change. If only for that reason, admit that and condemn it for that reason. But no, you got to protect certain interests, and people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren will defend them and die on the hill for those industries.
I think that's a really good note to end it on. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, this is The Red Lettuce. I'm your host, Eric Unger, and my co-hosts are Mitch Friedman and Robert Grillo. And you can follow our work on YouTube. We have more episodes on our channel at The Red Lettuce on YouTube. And please become a Patreon member. Thank you guys and have a good night.
Have a great night. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.